Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever Lock Up, Shut Down podcast. My name's Monica. I'm joined by my good friend Zach. How are you feeling today? You doing all right tonight?
Feeling good. Glad we're able to get this off and running. Been talking about it for feels like years, and
I think
all
it
of a sudden
has
here we
almost.
are.
I'm pretty sure it has just been years. We're finally, making this commitment.
It
Well,
is a commitment, but we're off and running and on the only up from here. So let's
yep.
see where we go.
You're starting from rock bottom. Alright, so today we're deciding which dark horse team is going to prove the doubters wrong, who's winning the Super Bowl, and which of the 5 first round quarterbacks are going to have the best career of them all. Stay tuned for all that, but first, let's start off with some of our familiar quarterback faces, why don't we? Starting off with Jameis Winston, the newest starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. How do you think this season's gonna go for Jameis Winston on his new team? New eyeballs that are finally functioning properly. I hope. I don't think the laser eye surgery went wrong for him.
I think he's found his way after bumpy road to get to where he is now. But I'm thinking if he can stick it out with the roster that the Saints have, with Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Marquez Callaway coming in with Traquan Smith, I think if he's able to play like he's been able to play, he'll be perfectly fine. And I think the Saints might be able to. I'm saying they're a playoff team with Jameis Winston as quarterback, even without Drew Brees. I'm thinking the Saints will be in the playoffs.
That's so. That's an interesting turnaround from the texts I was receiving for the entirety of the preseason. Number one Taysom Hill fan over here admitting that Jameis Winston's a good quarterback. I think that Jameis Winston is going to be just fine. This is a guy who threw for 5,000 yards even in that 30 for 30 season. I mean, this is a guy who can finally throw the ball downfield. The Saints have been looking for this for ages. For the last 5 years, Jameis Winston in preseason threw the longest pass the Saints have had in the last 5 years.
So we can't forget him winning a Heisman in college football. I mean, sure it was a couple years ago by now, but he'll throw the ball, and if he can fix the interceptions that he's been prone to throw in the NFL, I think he's got more than enough arm talent and plenty of talented wide receivers around him to cause a real threat in the league and pose problems for the defenses that they have to face.
Absolutely. As for going into the season, I don't know. Jameis Winston might have a rough start to the season. Michael Thomas is going to be out for the first 6 weeks. He's on the physically unable to perform list. He's expected to miss at least the first 5 games, but he's expected to miss about 6 of them. But apart from that, you still have Marquez Callaway. You still have Alvin Kamara coming out of the backfield to throw to. You don't have Latavius Murray anymore. This is unfortunate. I mean, Chris Hogan's on their 3rd team. There must be something they're doing right. I mean, as far as I can imagine. Traquan Smith is shown to be a very good wide receiver. He can be a great downfield target as long as he can catch the ball. And if you've got Jameis Winston throwing to you, I don't think you're not going to catch the ball.
Yeah, no, they've got plenty of talent, and I think you give them a couple weeks, build the chemistry with each other, and get Michael Thomas back from injury. If you look at them mid-season, I think they'll be a threat to every team in the league. Each week they have a game.
Absolutely. Moving on. Earlier this offseason, Aaron Rodgers had expressed his concerns with the Packers GM and upper management in general. Aaron Rodgers seemed like he was completely out of the Packers and was not going to play unless he had a trade. Now, obviously, this probably still isn't off the table necessarily. We still have 8-9 weeks until the trade deadline, I think. I don't know when
He
the
did
trade
get
deadline's
traded to Jeopardy. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, he did get traded to Jeopardy. That is true. How well do you think that the Packers are going to do this season with this whole Aaron Rodgers wants out, Devontae Adams wants out. How is that going to loom over the heads of the Packers going into the season? Do you think it's going to affect how well they do? Do you think they're going to be unable to make a deep playoff run, if not completely miss out on the playoffs? Or do you think that they're going to hold together strong and make it a big, uh, the last dance for the Packers, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm thinking it may sound obvious, but I'm thinking it's either boom or bust. If Aaron Rodgers goes, Devontae Adams is going, and they're gonna enter a rebuild mode. But I'm thinking in the end they'll stick it out. Aaron Rodgers will be mature enough. He's been around long enough to not be too worried about what's going on in the media, whatever the media's saying about him, whatever else is going on. As a 37-year-old, he's entering his 17th year. I think he'll be fine, and he'll figure it all out. And I think Devontae Adams will be happy to stick with the quarterback that he's been with all his whole career, and they'll be fine together. And I'm saying they won't win the division, but I'm not thinking they'll be far off from winning the division. I'm thinking the Vikings, dark horse pick, with Justin Jefferson in his second year, Dalvin Cook coming back, and then I'm thinking Kirk Cousins will find a way to improve, and I'm saying the Minnesota Vikings will be the champions of that division and make the playoffs this season.
It's certainly a surprise. I guess Kirk Cousins is going to give something up, give us something else to like, I guess. I personally think that not only are the Packers going to win the division, they're going to have a very deep playoff run. I'm not going to completely put it out that they're going to be in the Super Bowl, but I think that there's absolutely no reason they shouldn't be in the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers has been just recently, earlier this week, Aaron Rodgers has made it known to the world that, frankly, he's getting along with his team. He made a post on Instagram, I believe. Where
I'm always curious as to what the locker room situation is like with these scenarios after someone so publicly and someone they probably look up to as the leader. It was like, hey, I don't want to be here. And then 2 months later they walk in and you're looking at your teammate who a month or two ago was saying, hey, I don't want to play with you guys anymore. And I mean, I know it wasn't a player issue, it was more of a ownership front office issue, but
I think that
with
Aaron
how public
Rodgers
that was, I feel like it might cause some locker room controversy.
I think that Aaron Rodgers he's still a veteran presence in that locker room. And even with everything that happened earlier this offseason, it's like you said, it really wasn't a player-on-player issue. It was a player and upper management issue. Aaron Rodgers is getting along great with his coaches. He's getting along great with his players. He's even said that he's completely all in this season for the Packers. And frankly, if Aaron Rodgers is all in, let's just look at last season. 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. 4,000... Again, well, I mean, not that anyone was expecting Aaron Rodgers to make any less than 4,000 yards, but he's hitting 4,300 yards.
Oh yeah, it's no small feat, and we'll see if he gets better this season or can come anywhere close to last season. But I'm thinking they'll slowly start to decline, in the Packers franchise, as we know, and their dominance of that division is slowly coming to an end, for better or for worse.
Yeah, by the end of next season, I don't know. By the end of the season, Aaron Rodgers, I can say, will probably be out of that franchise. It's the beginning of the end for the Green Bay Packers. Coming into when we're doing this episode next season, we're going to be talking about how bad the Green Bay Packers are going to be.
I wonder if they'd be smart enough to try and get a trade for him before his contract runs out. But even after his contract runs out, whatever happens when he's not there, the fallout of him not being there is if Devontae Adams goes, then does Aaron Jones go? Because he wants to be on a competitive team and see how far they
Collapse
sink in
of
the
the
standings, or if they can trade one and try and get a nice package back and stay competitive in that division for many more years to come and not notice a difference with Aaron Rodgers gone.
Yeah, the sheer collapse of the team coming out of the season is going to be something to look out for. And I don't know, the Packers might not be having that same Packers vibe that they've always had, but we never know. Jordan Love might pull out, but that's a conversation for next season, you know? All right. Next up, let's talk about one of the biggest headlines of the offseason, the never-ending news cycle that we might never hear the end of. Deshaun Watson wants a trade from the Houston Texans. Now, currently, he still hasn't been traded. There's been plenty of talks and rumors about where he's to go. There's been plenty of rumors saying that he's going to be traded to the Dolphins and the Texans. He's currently listed as the third-string quarterback on the Texans' depth chart, which is kind of petty, but is understandable that he's not going to be playing the games, so he might as well not be a starter on the team, right? What is going to be the situation with Deshaun Watson? Where do you think he's going? What's going to happen with this whole situation? How do you see it evolving, moving on as we get closer and closer to the start of the season?
I'm thinking that Deshaun Watson will get traded to another team, but not until the end of this season.
Really?
He won't play another game in the Texans uniform, but he's not going to get traded until next offseason. I think almost every team in the league right now is happy with their current quarterback situation. And I mean, obviously that could change. We haven't even played week 1 yet, so we've got now 18 weeks of where quarterbacks could get hurt. But I'm thinking the Texans keep Deshaun Watson and then trade him next offseason. Because as the Texans organization, doesn't make sense to play him with all of his pending issues, and I don't think he wants to play for the Texans because when this news cycle first started, it started with Deshaun Watson not being happy with the Texans ownership and how he didn't like the hiring of the coaches, and he wasn't involved enough to hire the coaches. And then these sexual allegations come out, and he's now not playing for those reasons. But I think he's unhappy with the Texans. The Texans are unhappy with him. But when you see this trade, the one, teams aren't willing to take a risk on a player like him, and two, the Texans have him on a 5-year contract still, so they're not going to give him up for cheap. But no team is going to give up a lot for Deshaun Watson, knowing that he may have a lengthy suspension coming up in the near future for him. So I'm thinking the Texans don't want to sell him now, but no team wants to give up a lot. So I'm thinking this process plays on longer and longer and ends next offseason with a trade away from the Houston Texans.
Fair enough. Personally, I think that Deshaun Watson will be traded this season. I don't think he'll be traded until the trade deadline. In fact, it will be a huge headline once we get towards the trade deadline. It's going to continue to ramp up as we get closer, and then it's going to come out with a big bomb at the end. Deshaun Watson is traded to whoever. Do I know who he's going to be traded to? No. You know who I know he's not going to be traded to? The Miami Dolphins. You really think that Brian Flores is going to give up on the stud in Tua Tagovailoa? The Texans aren't budging on what they want for Deshaun Watson, and frankly, Brian Flores isn't budging in saying he doesn't want to trade away Tua Tagovailoa.
Question for you. So, I'm not saying it will happen, and I'm high on Tua as well, but let's say Tua doesn't work out and he's not the quarterback we all think he is in the NFL. Do you think the Dolphins will trade for Deshaun Watson at that point?
I think
Or Miami
that
Dolphins will
if Tua
trade.
turns out to not be the quarterback we all expect him to be, the Texans are going to be too greedy and still not budge. I don't think that the Texans
no
are
matter
going...
what,
The Texans
Deshaun
want
Watson's
a
not going.
high-level talent quarterback. If they think that Tua Tagovailoa is a high-level talent, they're going to want to trade for him. If they no longer decide, hey, this is a high-level talent quarterback that would significantly improve our team, if they just suddenly decide, yeah, we don't want him anymore, they don't want him anymore. They're not going to trade for a guy who's not a good quarterback. They want something good out of a trade for a very good player who might not have any suspensions in the near future, even if it is likely or possible, whatever, questionable, doubtable, whatever you want to call it. When it comes down to it, you want to get good trade value out of a guy who's on a 5-year contract. It is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, easily a top 10 quarterback. There's no reason why you wouldn't want to get a good quarterback in return for one of the top guys in the league. Like if the Patriots decided they wanted to trade Tom Brady all the way back when. They decided they wanted to trade him, they would have asked for a great quarterback back. They would have settled for nothing less than Peyton Manning or Drew Brees.
Although they did trade away Jimmy Garoppolo for little to nothing.
Fair enough. They didn't think anything of Jimmy G back then, though. Jimmy G wasn't looking to be the quarterback that he ended up turning out to be. He was just a backup that was playing behind Tom Brady. Good-looking backup, right, certainly a backup.
They may be right, though, with Jimmy G probably going to the bench again this season with Trey Lance right behind him on the depth chart, eager to make his NFL debut sooner rather than later.
Now, a place I could see Deshaun Watson going, I don't know. I think that he could go to Seattle even. Now, that's
with Russell
that's
Wilson.
Like a very, very big whoa, that's way out there, but there's a lot of guys who want out of Seattle right now. You have Jamal Adams wants out of Seattle. You have Russell Wilson, who had all those trade rumors during the offseason. He might have been out. He could have been out of Seattle. He could still be out of Seattle.
That's this very good point, but
that would be a great trade package for the Texans. Maybe not so much for Seattle, but you know, it's guys who are nearing the end of their contracts.
I don't think the one reason I don't think the Texans are in any hurry to trade Shaun Watson is that I think they've settled for the number 1 or number 2 pick that they're going to get this season. And I think that high draft pick is going to help them in the future a lot more than any trade for current players is going to help them. If they're able to trade Deshaun Watson for 5 draft picks like it was rumored for Miami, then maybe. But I don't think they'd trade Deshaun Watson for too many experienced players in the NFL, because I think their eyes are on the future right now, and earning a number 1 draft pick this season, plus then trading Deshaun Watson for multiple draft picks would be the best situation for them to have pan out this season, and they build up for the future.
Fair enough. All right. Moving on. Moving away from our veteran quarterbacks and their new situations, let's talk about you, the people watching those veterans. The fans are back in town. What impact, if any, will the fans have on the results of this game this upcoming season that they might not have had last year when they were just cardboard cutouts?
I'll be honest with you, it is great to have fans back, but I don't think they're changing much of the games that are going to be being played in front of them. I'm thinking that they'll change one. I'll give them one game for each team that may have been a different result, but I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking they'll have more of an impact on us watching the games on the TV than they'll have on the players in front of them actually out down on the field.
Really? Here's the thing. Last year, for the first time in who knows how long, home teams had a losing record against the away teams.
I'll tell
it
you
was just one
how
game,
long.
but in comparison to the record of a home team from the year before, there was no one game difference between home wins and home losses. It was a significant amount of teams winning at home.
I'll tell you, may not help my point, but I'll tell you, it was the first time ever that home teams had a losing record as a group at home. They went 157, 158, and 1.
I wonder, if we had fans
season
in the stadium last season, does Seattle have their big choke last year? Do the Chiefs, well, the Chiefs wouldn't have won the Super Bowl regardless because they were away.
I'm thinking that the stadiums themselves have more of an impact on the teams than the actual fans in the stadium. The altitudes at Denver and Kansas City have more of an impact on the game being played than the 60,000 fans that are sitting in the seats behind all those players.
Really? Here's what I think. We have the benefit of having just watched a full 2 weeks of college football, where fans are back in stadiums, crowded in. The atmosphere is just incredible, but that also makes the atmosphere absolutely awful for the opposing team. We saw so many unexpected upsets last week that frankly I can't help but think that the fans being back in the stadium is affecting teams either in a good way, bad way. I don't know.
I'm thinking that these NFL guys are the best of the best, been playing football their whole lives, and that they're not going to be affected by the fans as much as those young college guys are, who haven't been able to play a season in almost 2 years by now, and that the fans have much more of an effect at a college football game on the 20-year-olds than they do at an NFL game with 30-year-olds who've been playing in the NFL for 6, 7, 8 years by now, and that they've played in every environment you can imagine: rain, snow, sunny, fans, no fans. If you can think of it, they've probably played in that environment.
But what for people like Joe Burrow? What for Justin Herbert? What about all the rest of the rookie quarterbacks who are going into the season? They're gonna fall under the pressure of just being a rookie at an away game. Surely the fans have to have an impact in some way, shape, or form, especially so for teams like the Chiefs or Seattle, who frankly would already be winning home games anyway, but you have to think that they're going to do significantly better now that their fans are there to make things tough for the opposing team.
I'm not going to call it significant. I'll call it better. But let's say, for example, let's say the Dolphins are playing the Texans. The Chiefs are playing the Texans. Let's say at this point, anyone who plays the Texans, they're going to beat the Texans whether they play in Houston, at home, in Alaska, on Mars. The better team is going to win more times than not. And I mean, sure, if it's two close teams, evenly matched, maybe they'll make a difference in 1 or 2 games, but I'm not thinking a team that was great last season is going to be struggling this season. And same with a struggling team last season. I don't think their fans coming back are going to make them a
Maybe Seattle.
deep playoff team run this season. So I'm thinking whoever's good is going to stay good, and whoever is not good is still not going to be good this season. I don't think the fans are going to create too much of an effect on that, even though it is great to have fans back for just the average Joe sitting on their couch watching it on TV.
Now, another big factor that might affect your betting odds this season, there's a whole other week added to the season. Instead of a 16-game, 17-week season, we now have a 17-game, 18-week season. First time in NFL history, the longest we'll ever have. What kind of impacts on the performance later in the season, or just in general the overall health going into the playoffs? What kind of effects is this extra game going to have on the new season?
I'm not projecting a huge impact on that, because you remember the teams going to the Super Bowl are playing sometimes 20 games in a season, and it's not like the injuries start piling up all of a sudden in the playoffs. I mean, if you add 5 weeks onto a season, okay, injuries are going to pile up. You're going to have a different strategy. But I think if you just add 1 game, there might be a little bit more wear and tear on the bodies, obviously, but I'm not thinking there's going to be a noticeable difference with the torn ACLs, whatever other injuries you can think of. I'm not expecting a totally different year this year than we've had in the past due to the extra game.
I might have to I have to agree, honestly. Maybe in the long run we might start seeing things starting to pile up. Obviously that extra game might have an effect on the length of someone's career, but in terms of like just a single season impact, I don't think it's going to be all too much different. Like you said, Super Bowl teams are playing 20 games anyway. Half the time, you're not going to see a big effect of this extra game in the results later on. Now, of course, if a team is basically guaranteed the number 1 seed by, say, week 16, that might be an extra 2 losses onto the record just from playing their backups for the last 2 weeks. But you might have already had that anyway, regardless.
Yeah, those meaningless games at the end of the season might become even more meaningless at this point.
Pretty much.
But it also might add to the extra suspense that you get for a Week 17 matchup that decides 2 teams' playoff fates. So I'm expecting more interesting matchups at the end of the season, but then again, there's also going to be your fair share of...
is that football is going to be longer, better than ever.
Fan-wise, it'll be it'll be good for the fans, but I'm not thinking much is going to be... Not much is going to have an immediate impact on anything the players are doing this season.
All right, so whether or not the extended season is going to have a greater impact on the injuries of the players throughout the league, one thing we do know for certain is that the Ravens are definitely going to be having some injuries, as they already have. J.K. Dobbins is out for the season. Justice Hill just suffered an Achilles tear. Rashad Bateman's on injured reserve. Miles Boykin's on injured reserve. Half of our offensive line is on injured reserve. What's the future looking like for the Ravens with all these injuries looming over their heads?
I'm not too worried about the Ravens right now. You had the signing of Le'Veon Bell a couple hours before we started this segment. You got Gus Edwards, who obviously was able to rush for over 1,000 yards last season. Tyson Williams has looked promising in the preseason. And then to fill it out with Hollywood Brown, Sammy Watkins, Mark Andrews still at tight end, probably one of the obviously top 5 tight ends in the league, maybe argue top 3 tight end in the league. And then just your defense seems pretty healthy right now, and that defense is going to be able to keep any team competitive in a game. And whether you got Lamar Jackson at quarterback or you got Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, that defense is going to keep you in all 17 games this season. And with the weapons you have on offense, even with all the injuries, I'm thinking this team can still make a deep run in the playoffs as long as they can avoid even more injuries to the ones they already have right now.
Now, I certainly can agree with you on one thing. This is still a team that's going to make a deep run into the playoffs. There's no doubt about it. However, with all of these, injury concerns, it's completely thrown out any idea in my head that the Ravens are going to be making the Super Bowl this year. Now, normally I would say the Ravens are making the Super Bowl this year, but I just don't see it happening with no rushing attack. Well, some rushing attack. We have Gus Edwards, who, correction, had 723 yards and 6 touchdowns last season.
Maybe a 1,000 was a bit of an overestimate.
But who could certainly run for 1,000 yards as a starter this year. By all means.
706 touchdowns is impressive for
this
backup running
absolutely
back.
The 2-back
scheme they had with the running backs last season with J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Lamar Jackson at running back last season.
I'm not going to put too much confidence in the signing of Le'Veon Bell, because this is a guy who's on the decline of his career. By all means, he's way done in the league as far as I'm concerned. Le'Veon Bell is done. He's going to, by all means, he'll put up some stats this season, probably as a 2-back, but Le'Veon Bell is not any signing to be really excited about.
I'm thinking Le'Veon Bell will be at least the equivalent of what Gus Edwards did last season.
And I really don't know how
Gus Edwards takes on J.K. Dobbins' role from last season.
And I really don't think that the Ravens are going to do all that well offensively when you have the entirety of the offensive line listed as questionable.
The signing of Alejandro Villanueva was a really important signing for them, and I was kind of shocked. Go from the Steelers to the Ravens doesn't happen too often, but
happened twice this season.
It's happened, and I think it's made the Ravens a lot better with how important the running game is in their offensive scheme. I think that was one of the biggest signings they could have made this offseason, is to improve that offensive line. And I think with Ronnie Stanley and Alejandro Villanueva as your tackles, they could get a good running game going this season with Gus Edwards and Le'Veon Bell.
Now, by all means, this team is a playoff team still. It's still going to perform at a playoff team level. But there's just simply no way that this is an improvement from last season when we have all these injury concerns. Whoever the Ravens strength and conditioning coach is not doing their job right. Or maybe it could just be a case of the shortened training camp, shortened preseason that's a concern. But there was no reason that J.K. Dobbins should have been in a preseason game. That is, by all means, our starter.
That was a mistake, but
I don't think there's any way we can improve from last season.
I'm not thinking that derails their season.
The Ravens, by all means, are going to make it into the playoffs. We're going to make it into the divisional round, and we're not going any further than that. First time you'll hear that out of my mouth.
I can get on board with that, but yeah, I mean, if they went 11-5 last season, I'm thinking they could at least get 11 wins again go 11-6, if
An
not.
11-6. Yeah, I can see an 11-6
Yeah.
season.
So I'm not worried about them, and then we'll see if they can continue to try and fix their playoff curse that's haunted them for a few years. They finally got their first playoff win in a long time last year against the Titans, but yeah, they won't be going too far in the playoffs this
There's
season.
simply
But
too much talent in the AFC.
yeah, I'd be shocked if they don't make the playoffs, but I don't also expect them to do anything in the playoffs. And without how talented their division is, with Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati trying to build a competitive team, they're gonna have a tough schedule, but I've got full faith in their abilities, and with their defense, they're not giving up a ton of points to anyone. So if you catch Lamar Jackson on the right day, he'll put up more points than your defense allows, and they'll come out of many games with a W this season.
Moving on, we're going to be talking about the teams that we think are going to sneak by everyone's radar and be the dark horse that makes the playoffs this season, maybe even makes a big, deep playoff run that no one's expecting. To start off, personally, my dark horse this season is the Los Angeles Chargers. Now,
Wow, that is a dark horse. I'll give you that one.
currently in the NFL.com power rankings, Los Angeles Chargers are ranked around halfway up in the league. You know, they're not by all means, they're not a bad team. They've shown us that they were a pretty good team last season. Justin Herbert is a great quarterback. But for that exact reason, I think that the Los Angeles Chargers are going to surprise everyone and make a deep run into the playoffs this season.
I'm shocked by that pick, but I don't see them being able to be competitive. I mean, we've talked about injuries for the past few minutes, but I think they're one injury away from being on the struggle bus this season. Whether it's Keenan Allen or Austin Eckler, if one of them goes down, they're...
I mean, it's still a great team. Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Allens, and Jared Cook on the offense. Jared Cook, a great addition, by the way. Their defense is what I can only describe as all right. We're hoping that Derwin James might actually show us as good of a season as he had in his rookie year. Obviously, he deals with injury concerns a lot, and as you presented, that they probably are one injury away from not being a dark horse. But they've got Derwin James and Chris Harris healthy right now. Joey Bosa is looking to play this season. Kenneth Murray, great linebacker. Linval Joseph added to their defensive line.
Yeah,
This is an okay team that I think has the right amount of chemistry to be a good, if not great team that's going to show us a deep playoff run that no one is expecting out of them this season.
I think you're accurate with the part where you said they're an okay team. I think in the division that they are in, they're gonna have some tough games every week with the Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos.
It's the Raiders and the Broncos, though. At the very least, they're gonna be number 2 in their division. They're not going to be number 1 for obvious reasons, but at the very least, I'm giving them number 2 in their division in a wild card spot, and then a surprise deep run into the playoffs.
I think we can agree they're not winning their division, and then
Absolutely.
I think the AFC North is obviously getting at least one wild card team, and I'm not sold on Justin Herbert yet after 12, 13, 14 weeks, however many he played last season. I gotta see more out of him than most of a season. I think I gotta see what he can do in his second year, and to see if the wide receiver core of Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, and Jared Cook can hold up. Because I mean, obviously Keenan Allen, he's proven himself. He's a top 10 wide receiver in the league, but with Mike Williams and Josh Palmer, they're they're two young guys as well that I'm not. Those young guys are too inconsistent right now for me to consider them a likely playoff team at the moment.
I suppose so. But let's start talking about your dark horse, shall we?
We don't have to go far on the schedule to see my dark horse team. My dark horse to make a deep playoff run this season is none other than the Washington football team, who in fact plays your dark horse, Los Angeles Chargers, week 1 of the NFL season.
Let's see whose dark horse is the king of chess, I suppose.
Yeah, so I'm sold on the Washington football team, as we're calling them this season. They've got an improved quarterback from last season, same running back, and improved wide receiver core, adding Curtis Samuel and Adam Humphries, along with their still stellar defense that is a top 5 defense in the league and arguably one of the best defense in the league. So with that defense and a wide receiver core of Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Adam Humphries, in the weak division that they're in, I could see this team winning the division, making the playoffs, and beating many teams on their way to a NFC championship. That's what I'm giving them right now.
Did you just try to sell your wide receiver core by telling me about 2 5'10" wide receivers?
Curtis Samuel is a proven wide receiver in this league.
He plays more running back than he does wide receiver.
With Ryan Fitzpatrick and Antonio Gibson back there, he'll stay out wide. He'll beat all the cornerbacks that we have, and he'll get us into the playoffs.
Now,
and you saw Humphries last season.
Remind me as to who's on your secondary at the current moment in time.
The current secondary, Landon Collins and Bobby McCain. But they won't have time to get. No receiver's going to be able to get down to Landon Collins, Bobby McCain. Because on the defensive line, we've got Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Montez Sweat. If you got Chase Young and Montez Sweat coming at you on both sides, nowhere for you to go. No one's going to get down to Landon Collins and Bobby McCain. And the Washington football team is going to have the best defense in the NFL.
I can't help but think that what we saw last season was nothing but a fluke, caused by an unusual season, no fans in the stadiums. There's no way that the Washington football team are making a deep run in the playoffs after winning their division at 7-9.
Did you watch the playoffs after that 7-9 record, where they played Tom Brady and the actual Super Bowl champions, and had a chance to tie the game and take the lead up until the very last minute of the game?
But they didn't.
And that's why I wouldn't say last team's team was an NFC championship team.
I don't think that the Washington football team are going to even scratch the playoffs. I don't think they're going to even scratch a winning record. I think that the Washington football team could even be the worst in their division. Ryan Fitzpatrick has never proven himself as a good starting quarterback. He's always a come off the bench and save your season type of guy. With that being your number one option at quarterback, there's just no saving your team.
Look no further than the very last game this team played, where we almost beat the Super Bowl champions with Taylor Heineke at quarterback.
Lost.
This team doesn't need a Pro Bowl quarterback to be a competitive team with every other team in the league. They need an average quarterback, which we have, and to keep the core that they had around them. And that's what we were able to do. Kept every star player that we had, improved the weak positions, and we are. Terry McLaurin is a top 10 receiver in the league. Can beat you deep, can beat you with his route running skills, He'll beat you whichever way you let him beat you. He'll beat you. And with a quarterback that can throw it where he wants to throw it, Terry McLaurin's going to score more touchdowns than he did last season. And the Washington football team is going to make the playoffs and surprise many teams in the playoffs.
Surprise. Yeah, I'm sure we'll all be surprised if they make the playoffs.
No, you could double team Terry McLaurin every time he was on the field last season because there was no other threat to throw it to besides Terry McLaurin.
There's still no other threat.
Had the season
Adam
he had.
Humphries is not a star caliber player in the league.
Adam Humphries is a better wide receiver than the Baltimore Ravens have at their wide receiver 3. Yet we just got done saying the Baltimore Ravens
As it turns
were a
out,
playoff team.
Well, as it turns out, Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't have legs. He has as much of a leg as Alex Smith had in 2019.
Alex Smith and Ryan Fitzpatrick have a much better arm than Lamar Jackson. That's what a quarterback does. Lamar Jackson has legs because he's a running back. Ryan Fitzpatrick has an arm because he's a quarterback.
Now that we're done talking about our favorite quarterbacks, let's talk about your new favorite quarterbacks. 5 quarterbacks were taken in the first round of this year's draft. Those being Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones. Each of them are going to be covered in this week's Rookie Spotlight Quarterbacks Edition. Starting off with Zach Wilson, the second overall pick in this year's draft, the new face of the franchise for the New York Jets, now that local bum Sam Darnold is out of town.
Hey, now, you gotta be careful with that. Sam Darnold's gonna be good.
In 3 years at BYU, Zach Wilson threw for 7,600 yards in a team that plays good opponents for the most part. Now, I say for the most part, looking at last year's schedule, where, frankly, the quality of their opponents wasn't the greatest.
They did have that game against Coastal Carolina, and
which they lost, mind you. However,
but Zach Wilson looked really good in that game.
Zach Wilson did look really good. He threw for 240 yards. He threw for 240 yards and a touchdown and an interception, 19 for 30. In comparison to Coastal Carolina's McGall, who threw 10 for 15 for just 85 yards and no touchdowns.
Yep, I remember watching that game. He was overpowered by a Coastal Carolina defense, but if you give him a level playing field with his opponent, I think Zach Wilson's going to outperform a lot of quarterbacks in the league. But that level playing field doesn't happen very often due to him being drafted to the New York Jets and the wide receiver core that they have of Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder, along with the lack of other weapons around him and lack of defense. I think Zach Wilson is going to be on the unfavorable end
by
of
all
many
means, this
games.
season, Zach Wilson is not going to have the greatest of years. He's going to look very good as a quarterback. His team around him is going to collapse because it's not a good team. But I think that the New York Jets have finally found that piece, that quarterback, that's going to lead them into the promised land. For the first time since, I don't know, Joe Namath. Now, there was one good team that BYU did completely obliterate last season, and that was, at the time, ranked 21st, the Boise State Broncos, where Zach Wilson threw 22 for 28 with 360 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 51-17 blowout against Boise State on their own home turf. This is
he's a heck of a quarterback.
quarterback who completely blew off the reins last year as a junior quarterback at Brigham Young. Easily
He's
one of the better talents in this year's draft.
he's not going to have many games where he has time to pick and choose where he throws the ball to due to the Jets team that he's on. But I think career-wise, he's going to have a heck of a career. Either the Jets are going to become a good team and he'll want to stay, or I'm thinking his contract's going to run up and he's going to leave and move to a better team.
I think he's
And
going
I
to
think
turn the
he's
Jets
going to have a heck
into
of a
the
career.
next big dynasty. Now, here's what I will say. Out of all 5 of the rookie quarterbacks, Zach Wilson will not have the best career out of all of them. But I'm going to go as far as to say Zach Wilson has a better career in the NFL than Trevor Lawrence.
Wow.
We're going to talk about next. Trevor Lawrence. Incredible player.
Lawrence. Incredible college player. Interesting to see what happens with his professional career.
He's got a great coach who we're going to talk about later. But
I think with the new coach, obviously new quarterback, young running back, new wide receiving core,
young running back who he's familiar with.
Yeah, I think with the Travis Etienne obviously not going to play this season, but James Robinson, young running back, there's too many variables right now for me to have any confidence in what the Jags are going to do this season.
This season,
along with
I
them
think
playing
the
in
Jaguars
a weak division. I think they could reasonably get second place in their division, but with all the new pieces they have and so many young guys, I don't have a ton of confidence in saying that they'll be a good team and have a good quarterback and cause problems for other teams yet.
It's going to be a team that's going to take a little while to develop, but I think will look great in the next couple of years. However, over the course of Trevor Lawrence's career, I don't know. I feel like eventually he's going to hit a peak if he has not already hit his peak. Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback who could have a lot of potential. I simply don't see it.
I don't see it either. I think he's not able to move like all the other quarterbacks in this draft are able to move. Okay, maybe Mac Jones can't move a lot, but you look at Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields. All 3 of them are going to be able to run, get out of the pocket, create something with their feet. And that's how the quarterback game position is evolving in the current day and age with all the good quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. They can all get out of the pocket and create something, but Trevor Lawrence going to be not mobile enough, and with the poor offensive line the Jags have, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to be as successful as people are expecting him to be.
I think that as we look back, say, 7 years from now, we're going to be saying that Trevor Lawrence was simply... we can almost describe him as an old quarterback. He'll be basically outdated in his position. It's like a pure blocking tight end in the modern league. Completely useless. There's no need for them. Okay, there's plenty of need for them. The Ravens, for example. But they're not exactly necessary on every single team. Some teams are just fine with having a really good receiving tight end. And that's okay. But I think we're going to see the same kind of evolution with the quarterback position now that all these quarterbacks are in the league who are mobile. You're going to start seeing a lot more pressure that simply these pocket passers won't be overwhelmed by.
Yep. So there's The reason Trevor Lawrence is on the Jags, and it's because they had the number one pick, and they had the number one pick because they had the worst team. And I don't
I
think
think that the
they've
Jags
done
have a lot
enough
of
to improve
untapped
the
talent. Obviously,
pieces.
defensively, they're really bad. That the reason they needed the number one pick is because they didn't have a quarterback and have an atrocious defense. There's nothing Gardner Minshew is going to do to lead your team to anything but the worst team in the league.
If they could have their Saxonville defense from a couple seasons ago, where they were a legitimate playoff team, then maybe we can talk about how far this team can go. But with the defense that they have now, which is nowhere near Saxonville, I think they're going to struggle, and Trevor Lawrence is going to be put in uncomfortable positions that he's not used to being in after being at Clemson and winning every game his whole career, it felt like. And
Pretty
with
much.
all the new pieces they have, I think it'll take some time to get used to, and I think the Jags are still a couple years away from being where they want to be, even
I
with all
especially
the
think
moves
that
they've made.
pressure that Trevor Lawrence is going to be constantly dealing with for probably the first couple of seasons of his career, even if he does have all this untapped potential, it's going to be completely stunted by whatever happens to him in the next 3 years.
Yep, he'll spend more time on his backside than he does on his feet, which isn't going to help him get any better. So improve the pieces around him, you get an improved quarterback. But with the pieces you have around him right now, I'm not thinking he'll be as good of a quarterback as everyone's used to him being.
Now, the next quarterback is a bit of a wild card. The third? Third. The third pick in this year's draft was Trey Lance, who went to the San Francisco 49ers on what was the Dolphins pick before they traded back. Of course, that pick was the Texans pick, but you know how Bill O'Brien worked his way around over there.
Yeah, there's a reason the Texans have a new GM right now.
Trey Lance is a bit of an interesting pick. We might not see him start this season because the 49ers seem to believe in Jimmy Garoppolo still, which all power to them. Trey Lance is a bit of an interesting story. He only played one full season as a quarterback at North Dakota State in his sophomore year, where he played he played all 16 games through for 2,700 yards, through 28 touchdowns, not a singular interception in that season. Played one game in 2020 where he threw 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Obviously, in 2019, North Dakota State, completely undefeated, blew away every single team in their way, won the championship game. The next season, without Trey Lance, crumbled, fell apart. They fell off. Trey Lance might be a very interesting experiment to see in the NFL. He might be an okay quarterback, if not a good quarterback.
I think I don't have too high of hopes for his career as I do with the other quarterbacks in this list.
I think
But for a season or two, I think he could be a real quarterback that leads teams to
I think
good
that he has a lot of untapped potential. He certainly has a very good arm. He's got very good legs. And he has a lot of potential, which is why he was taken at the third. But I think it might be a little while before we start seeing Trey Lance at his absolute best.
No, I think it's gonna take a while for him to get used to, just because you get those Power 5 quarterbacks. They're used to. There's a jump from the Power 5 to the NFL. There's also a giant jump from a non-Power 5 conference quarterback to a
team.
Power 5. Yeah. So to go from FCS to just the Power 5 conference level and then jump all the way to the NFL level, I think it'll take some time. But the one thing he has going for him, which is a complete opposite of Trevor Lawrence, is that he's got more weapons than he knows what to do with and a crazy good defense that's going to keep him in a lot of games. So he can throw the ball to Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and you've got the running threat of Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon behind him. So I think with all the pieces he has, he'll be able to cause some problems after he gets a couple weeks under his belt with the weapons he has. I think he'll be really successful this season.
It
But
certainly
he's
is
gonna
a
definitely going to
gamble.
take some time to get used to for him.
It is certainly a gamble for the 49ers to be taking such an inexperienced quarterback, is the best I can call him. He's a great quarterback, but he's very, very inexperienced. As for
Yeah.
concerns about him, there's nothing much to see. He completely dominated the FCS at North Dakota State. Obviously,
Yep.
well, for
That
obvious
was
reasons, he
that
was
was
playing at
about
North
his.
Dakota State. There is one game that concerns me. It's the FCS quarterfinal against Illinois, in which he only threw 10 for 21 with 135 yards, no touchdowns, but no interceptions, in a 9-3 win.
Yeah, I say that's the biggest criticism of him right now is that he hasn't played tough competition yet.
Hasn't
And
played tough competition,
in
hasn't played
in
very
the
much at all.
preseason, I'll say in the preseason he looked okay, but obviously he wasn't playing the starters for the preseason either. So I think it's going to take some time for him to get used to all this NFL level players that he's going up against, but he's got the best. He's on the best team out of every other rookie quarterback, which is going to help him a lot. So I think he could pull something off that Jimmy. I don't see much of a gap between him and Jimmy G right now. So I think once he gets used to this level, he'll be ready, and I hope the 49ers are ready to give him a shot once he makes his adjustments to the NFL.
Absolutely. Now, the next quarterback we're going to talk about is Mac Jones. I believe he was the 15th pick or something. I don't remember what pick.
So.
I don't remember exactly which pick he was. It was a mid first round pick by the New England Patriots, who have been looking for some way to fill the void that has been left by Tom Brady being a Tampa Bay Buccaneer and once again a champion. Mac Jones, who
Yep. Impossible void to fill that Tom Brady is left, but with everything that I've heard about him, he seems like he's doing as much as he can. And to be honest, I wasn't sold on him after the draft. I didn't think it was a great pick by the Patriots, but if you're able to convince Bill Belichick to cut Cam Newton, I trust Bill Belichick enough. He's been around the game enough, coached Tom Brady for long enough to know what a good quarterback looks like. And if he can trust Mac Jones enough, then I think I've just got to hop on board and trust Bill Belichick that Mac Jones is a legit quarterback and see where it goes from here.
Bill Belichick, he's talking. You have to remember that Tom Brady was on the bench and really only got his job because I believe it was Drew Bledsoe got injured.
Yeah,
Tom Brady only really got his chance because of that.
To become the best quarterback potentially that's ever played the game, it's not gonna go that way just because of your talent. Like, he was a 199th pick out of the draft, so to develop that into the best quarterback to ever play the game, I think Bill Belichick deserves at least some credit.
He deserves some credit.
To take a step as drastic as cutting Cam Newton, to cut your backup quarterback,
But also,
you've got to be pretty confident in your starting quarterback, which in the Patriots' case happens to be Mac Jones, who has looked good in the preseason, but I knew his time was coming, but I didn't expect the cutting of Cam Newton at all.
I think
until that happened.
While Bill Belichick deserves the credit that he deserves for developing Tom Brady into the greatest quarterback of all time, I think he will also deserve the credit for the downfall of the New England Patriots dynasty, in which Mac Jones somehow tore their entire team apart. Cam Newton, the backup quarterback, was released for some reason. Bill Belichick will be credited for an atrocity. Mac Jones is not a great quarterback by any means. I didn't think he was even deserving to be in the Heisman race, as opposed to his weapons that kind of did deserve it, including Najee Harris, one of the best running backs I've ever seen coming out of the league, but we'll talk about him next week on the running backs version of this segment.
I think Mac Jones
Devontae Smith, one of the greatest wide receiver cores in college football history. Mac Jones has been carried to how he performed last season. He was carried to it. His arm is what I can only describe as one of the weaker arms I've seen, apart from that whoever the hell that guy was that started for Georgia last season.
I personally think Mac Jones has looked like the best quarterback
for the same reason
any of these five in the preseason.
For the same reason that we discredited Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones doesn't have a leg. He will also be seen as an outdated quarterback in the next 5 years. Mac Jones will be seen as outdated. He probably won't even be in the league in the next 5 years. Mac Jones is going to be a complete flop and a complete waste of a first-round pick. A trade-up for a first-round pick.
That is blasphemy. Mac Jones has been the best quarterback in this quarterback class in the preseason so far. And with the talent that Bill Belichick has in developing players, Bill Belichick is able to develop plays for his players, and he knows this system better than any coach in the league right now has a system. And I think that Mac Jones is going to fit into that system perfectly. I think Mac Jones is a young, improved Tom Brady. I'm not saying he's going to become the best quarterback in the league, but I'm saying Mac Jones right now is the rookie replica of Tom Brady. When Tom Brady was coming into the league.
I think that if Bill Belichick can somehow develop Mac Jones into a good quarterback, we should be singing praise to Bill Belichick. The logo of the NFL should be replaced with just Bill Belichick, his face, with the letters NFL tattooed on his forehead or something. We'll keep the hoodie on and everything.
If this guy's able to convince Nick Saban and Bill Belichick that he's a starting quarterback, there's got to be something in him that is convincing arguably the two best coaches in the world right now for football. Convince both of them that he is a high-level quarterback that is ready to lead both of their teams to what they hope is a championship.
Just unconvinced that Mac Jones will have a great career in the NFL, and I think out of all 5 of these players, Mac Jones is number 6. I'd put Kyle Trask having a better career than Mac Jones, and that's not just my Florida Gator bias coming out.
Mac Jones
Tell
is
you
going to
what,
be a good quarterback.
David
Mac
Mills,
Jones.
the backup quarterback for the Houston Texans right now, will have a better career than Mac Jones.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. I'm shocked right now. It's hard to leave me speechless, but I think you've left me speechless right now.
Told you I was gonna come in here and completely obliterate a few people, and you have yet to see the worst of it yet. You have yet to see. If this is leaving you speechless, you have yet to see the worst of it. We are only halfway through our topics.
Mac Jones has Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby
Nelson
Myers.
Aguilar. That's who you're crediting as a weapon. Nelson Aguilar.
Yes. Yes.
You know, the guy that one
saying
man who saved the babies from a fire a few weeks ago was saying, "Oh, we were catching stuff unlike Aguilar."
Yeah, guess what? There's a reason why all those teams have been in games that mattered with Nelson Aguilar. Because Nelson Aguilar is going to
The Raiders
get
weren't
you to those
ever
games
in a
that
game
matter.
that mattered last year. They were an atrocity that somehow
Derek
made
Carr.
Nelson Aguilar look good.
Derek Carr was the quarterback of him last season. That is why he is not able to. Derek Carr has lost more games in his first 6 seasons. All right, reword that. Cratchit. Derek Carr lost the most games in his first 6 seasons ever since his brother, David Carr. Derek Carr is not a good quarterback. That is why Nelson Aguilar got out of Las Vegas, came to New England, to play for a good quarterback under the name of Mac Jones.
I think that we're going on a bit of a tangent here. We have one more rookie that is left to highlight, who I think we can both agree might have the best career out of all 5 first-round quarterbacks taken this year.
I think so.
By process of elimination, you've already figured out that that man is Justin Fields. Now you must be asking yourself, how is an Ohio State quarterback going to somehow have a better career than Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, and Zach Wilson? Now, of course, you're not asking how he's going to be better than Mac Jones. Of course he's going to be better than Mac Jones.
You know what? If I was sitting with you at a desk right now, I think I would have to walk out. But let's go on about
Justin Fields. Out of everyone taken in this draft class, has the absolute most potential, has the highest work ethic out of anybody taken in the draft. I'll put him over all other 213 or something picks that were taken. How many picks are there? I don't know. 230 something. I'll put him over 230 other guys in terms of work ethic, raw talent, potential. Justin Fields is going to lead the Chicago Bears to absolutely nothing, because the Chicago Bears probably aren't going to treat him like he deserves. He's probably going to go to another team and then absolutely dominate the league for 10 years.
I'm thinking if we get to week 10 and Justin Fields isn't starting, I'm going to be shocked.
If we get to week 2 and Justin Fields isn't starting, I'm going to be in shock.
You got to give Andy Dalton some time, I feel like. But Justin Fields is on the road to a starting job. Andy Dalton knows it. Matt Nagy knows it. The NFL knows it. The whole world knows it. Justin Fields is going to be the starting quarterback in Chicago very soon, and is going to be the starting quarterback for a very long time once he gets the job. And with receivers like Allen Robinson and Marquise Goodwin right now, I'm thinking he could lead that team to they could almost be 500 this season. I know it
I
doesn't
think
sound
that
like a lot,
if
but in
Justin
the
Fields is
division that
starting,
they're
there's
in,
no reason that they should be under 500, if not a playoff team. Not to mention, last year, they were a playoff team with Mitch Trubisky leading the way somehow. I think that
with the division that they're in, with the Packers and the Vikings, I think it's going to be tough. But I think Justin Fields could definitely do it in the near future, lead them to a playoff team and division
Justin
championship,
Fields will
especially after Aaron Rodgers is gone out of Green Bay.
Justin Fields will inevitably have more Super Bowls than you know what? I'm gonna make something bold. Than all 4 of the other quarterbacks taken in the first round of this year's draft
Combined. Wow. I'm thinking Justin Fields gets
I say he gets 3 rings.
2 Super Bowl rings.
I say he gets 3 rings. Zach Wilson gets a ring. Trevor Lawrence will somehow squeak his way to a ring. Trey Lance will not get a ring.
You don't think Mac Jones
Mac
is going to get any
Jones
rings?
will not be in the league in 5 years.
Will Justin Fields have more winning seasons than Mac Jones has seasons total?
Yes. I think he'll have that in 5 years.
I know we're on Justin Fields, but I don't know. I haven't processed what you said about Mac Jones fully yet. But Justin Fields, great quarterback, showed it in college, showed it in the playoffs. Led his team to the championship. I mean, obviously Trey Sermon was great, but Justin Fields, with his mobility, his arm, I think he could have a Cam Newton MVP season in his career. I think that's my comparison. Is Cam Newton's MVP season is going to be what Justin Fields
the old dab
turns
season.
out to be. Yeah, the dab season is going to make a return with Justin Fields.
I can absolutely agree with that. I can absolutely agree with that. Justin Fields, in terms of NFL quarterbacks, does remind me most of prime Cam Newton. But I think he'll have a longer career than Cam Newton, having learned from Cam Newton's mistakes, having learned from the mistakes of someone like RG3.
Yeah, that's important to learn when to slide, when to give yourself up, and all those processes that come with it. But yeah, he's got a great career in front of him, and I'm looking forward to him getting a chance, hopefully sooner rather than later, with Andy Dalton.
Absolutely. Now that we're done talking about the rookie quarterbacks this season, including Trevor Lawrence, let's start talking about Trevor Lawrence's new head coach in Jacksonville. One of the greatest head coaches of all time, if I do say so myself, at least in terms of college. Yeah. With a 187-32 record, Urban Meyer is finally taking a crack at the NFL head coaching scene with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yep, he's been a heck of a coach, one of the best to ever do it in college. I won't call him the best, but definitely one of the best.
Now I'm a bit biased as a
to the NFL.
We're both a bit biased as Florida Gator fans, obviously.
Yeah, he led us to some good times, but I'm giving Nick Saban the nod over him as the greatest college football coach.
Well, obviously, Nick Saban by all means is going to go down as the greatest college football head coach of all time by all means. We'll see how Urban Meyer can do taking a crack at the NFL, though, which is one thing that Nick Saban could never quite do right.
Yeah, between Nick Saban and his close friend Steve Spurrier, there have been some struggles making the transition from college football to the NFL.
Now, he's taking over the role in the young Jacksonville Jaguars team that we've already discussed. How well do
Yeah.
you think that Urban Meyer is going to do, not only in his first season as a coach, but in future seasons after that? Do you think he's even going to last to those future seasons? Is he going to retire himself? Is he going to be fired? What is the future for Urban Meyer in his new challenge as an NFL head coach?
I'm not too confident on him for just this season. There's a reason why the Jags had a job opening. It's because they don't have a good team, don't have a good coach, and they've got a lot of work to do. So obviously he's got a lot of problems to solve, and I think getting a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence is going to solve some of those issues, but obviously he's not a great quarterback yet. So I think he'll be able to improve them by 1 or 2 games this season, and I think by the end of his NFL career, he's gonna be known as a successful NFL coach.
I think that Urban Meyer, by all means, is going to look like a great head coach, and he might last a little while. I definitely don't think that he's going to be fired as a head coach. And by all means, the Jags are going to be successful under his term as a head coach. But I think just as he did with the Florida Gators, and just as he did with the Ohio State Buckeyes,
he's gonna get sick.
He's
so-called sick.
Going to be a quitter.
If that's a word you want to call it, I think we can call it that.
I don't think he's going to be able to live up to the pressure of being an NFL head coach. And I think that Urban Meyer is going to once again get sick, as we call it.
Yeah, so there's been some controversy following him for wherever he goes. There's been controversy when he left Florida Gators, controversy at Ohio State, both before and after he left, and then even with Jacksonville already, he was fined $100,000 for violating practice rules before he was even had the job for 6 months. So I think
the current
football,
and there's also the investigation about his about the recent cutting priorities.
Cutting those.
Wherever you stand on that stance, obviously the NFLPA had agreed against something like that. So
I think football wise, he'll be fine. But if he can, it's just whether or not he can keep the job without getting caught up in too many other off the field shenanigans that he's been involved in throughout his career so far. So football wise, he knows his stuff, but they don't tolerate that stuff in the NFL that he's been pulling in college games. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for him.
Shenanigans, huh? Well, speaking of shenanigans, let's talk about the shenanigans that have resulted in the Washington football team's latest 8 finalists. Now, the Washington football team has narrowed their list of potential names down to 3 options, but the only public ones we know of so far are the 8, obviously sticking with the Washington football team, the Washington Armada, the Washington Presidents, the Washington Brigade, the Washington Red Hogs, the Washington Commanders, the Washington Red Wolves, and the Washington Defenders. Definitely not taking any XFL inspiration there.
XFL is the XFL. There's nothing in the
Who
NFL
do you think,
quite like the XFL.
out of these out of these 8 names, what do you think their 3 finalists are? And which in particular is your favorite?
For these 3 finalists, I'm thinking they're in between the Washington Presidents, the Washington Defenders, and the Washington Red Wolves. And as a personal hope, I would go with the Washington Presidents.
Really?
I'd like to keep the name and the DC style of names going around. I mean, you got the Washington Nationals that are up there in DC with them, and you got the Washington Capitals up there with them. So I think you stick with the, I don't want to call it political names, but stick with the governmental DC type of names. And I'm hoping they go with the Washington Presidents. It may not be as
exciting.
It may not be as exciting as like a Panther or an Eagle or a Seahawk or something, but it goes with, it fits the style that they've used in the past for other team names, and I'm hoping they go with the Washington Presidents from this list.
Personally am fond of the Washington Red Wolves. It's one of the more popular names, as has been since they first had to change their name. I can only see them having the Washington football team as one of their 3 options. I think that they must be listening to fan input, and they probably believe that the Washington Red Wolves will be the one that they want to go for, so that has to be in one of their 3 options.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the Washington Defenders has to be up there as one of the names that they're considering.
Yeah, I think the President's name that I chose was probably the least exciting out of Armada, Brigade, Redhawks, Commanders, etc.
I do like the Armada. It's certainly a fun name, but kind of weird for Washington.
I think the President's fits the style, and get a new color scheme and hit the reset button. But yeah, if you go with the Red Wolves, like you suggested, they're probably sticking with the same color scheme and doing all that sort of stuff. But
up next, it'll be the moment you've all been waiting for. The grand finale, our Super Bowl picks for this season. Stay tuned for that. But before we get to that, instead of talking about the best teams, let's talk about who we think are going to be the worst teams. Who's going to be competing for the number 1 pick this year? You had the Dolphins and the Bengals competing for Joe Burrow. You had I was almost going to say the Dolphins again. You had the Jets and the Jaguars competing to tank for Trevor Lawrence. This year, who is going to be competing for the Toilet Bowl?
The infamous Toilet Bowl between the AFC worst team and the NFC worst team for this segment, to make it similar to the Super Bowl, but the opposite right now. And for my AFC team, the worst AFC team in the league this season is going to be the Houston Texans.
I totally agree with you.
Between the quarterback of Tyrod Taylor and the new head coach and GM and almost the whole new organization that they have right now, I don't have much hopes for them this season. I mean, they do play in the worst division in the AFC, which will give them an easier schedule than other teams. But even with the easier schedule, I don't think there's a team that you look at and be like, oh, I think the Houston Texans could beat them right now.
I honestly think that the Houston Texans could go 0-17 this year, if we really gave them the chance.
I wouldn't disagree with you.
This
Maybe they
they
can
have a
sneak one out.
four-headed monster at running back for some reason. And the
So they,
rest of their team has gone nothing but downward from last year. They lost Will Fuller. Deshaun Watson is simply not going to be there. Tyrod Taylor is a great quarterback. I like Tyrod Taylor as a quarterback, but he's not Deshaun Watson. Your entire defense left you when J.J. Watt did. You didn't add anybody in the offseason. Your draft picks were complete wastes. You wasted your pick number 67 on Davis Mills out of Stanford as if you needed a quarterback. You could easily have just traded Deshaun Watson away for one. For some reason, you decided to draft Nico Collins out of Michigan. You don't need a wide receiver right now. You need a team. You picked a tight end for some reason.
we can analyze their draft picks, and obviously they did have a poor draft, but
a poor draft, a poor offseason, poor free agency.
They could have had the best draft in the league, and they're still not gonna be able to compete with the other teams that they're gonna have to face. So to say they're
that's precisely the point. They
might be a stretch just because they faced the Jaguars twice, but if they win more than 2 games, I'll be shocked to this season.
They have done nothing this offseason. They have made no impact. They would have been bad if they had an impact this offseason. They still would have been the worst team.
The best decision they've made this offseason. The fact that they didn't have an
impact this offseason in any way, shape, or form just proves that this is going to be one of the worst teams we've ever seen.
The best decision they've made this offseason is to not play their best player, which says a lot about a team when that's your best move this offseason. So it's not going to be pretty, and they're going to be struggling for a long time to come. But yeah, for the toilet bowl, they're halfway down the toilet already in the AFC.
By all means, they'll be getting the first pick next season, and I honestly think they might not even
Yeah. No, I'm
what we've
going to give
seen so
them
far in college football, they won't even get a good quarterback out of the first pick.
Yeah, that was not a good first week 1 for the quarterbacks that are hoping to get drafted high this next 2022 draft. So now, let's focus our attention to who the NFC Toilet Bowl champions are.
Why don't you lead us off there, Zach? Who's your NFC pick?
My NFC pick is going to be the New York Giants. The New York Giants are not going to be good this season.
The team that almost made the playoffs over your dark horse last year?
That team has multiple injuries, and Saquon Barkley and Kenny Golladay, 2 great players, but 2 great players that I can't count on to stay healthy throughout a 18-week season right now. And we saw how they were without Saquon Barkley. So if you get one small injury with Saquon, they'll be taking him out, and I think when Saquon goes out, this team goes out, and they'll be flushed down the toilet with the Houston Texans come the end of the season.
Now, I don't believe too much in Daniel Jones by any means, but it is a team that has improved from last season. There's no way. I don't see how they can simply do worse than they did last season, despite having improved.
When you look at their roster right now, there's no trust in Daniel Jones, and then you got Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, top 4 wide receivers, all listed on the injury report right now. So they're going to have that issue of no offensive weapons, and when you can't move the ball, your defense is going to be out on the field, and they may not have a terrible defense. Like, they're obviously not as bad as the Texans, but with the amount of time that this defense is going to spend on the field each game, they're going to get exposed and get tired, and I think they're going to let this team down, and the Giants are going to limp their way to the end of the season and get another high draft pick.
You know who I think is going to be not only getting the first pick in the draft, but might honest to God, go 0-17 this season? I know I just said that about the Houston Texans, but listen, if the Houston Texans don't do it, I can guarantee you one team will.
Which team is that?
Led by one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen, and I had to watch Mark Sanchez.
If you say Sam Darnold, I might have to.
Player that frankly should not be getting another chance in this league right now. Player who honestly was worse as a quarterback in his draft class than Josh Rosen. Yet one of them's not in the league anymore, and one of them is for some reason a starting quarterback over the greatest XFL quarterback the world has ever seen. I think that the Carolina Panthers have no shot of winning a game this season so long as Sam Darnold is their starting quarterback.
Wow.
There is no way you can...
And I'm still let down knowing that you went there.
This is a team that objectively has great weapons. You've got DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, who, frankly, already tried to escape Sam Darnold once. Here he is again.
You have arguably the best running back in the entire league.
They have a two-headed monster in Christian McCaffrey and Chuba Hubbard. Albeit, their defense is by far atrocious. They improved it with J.C. Horn.
Defense is great, but they have the best running back in the entire league right now. And you're going to come out here.
I can say the same about you when you say that Saquon Barkley's New York Giants are going to be the worst team in the NFC.
Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones.
Sam Darnold is not a better anything than Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is a better runner, a better quarterback, a better...
Let me ask you this. Who was Sam Darnold's coach last season?
Adam Gase, one of the worst head coaches
Enough
to
said.
ever coach in the NFL.
Adam Gase has been the only coach of Sam Darnold his entire career.
You know who played well, even despite having Adam Gase
a new coach
as a head coach?
Who's that?
Ryan Tannehill.
Ryan Tannehill did not play good.
An average quarterback.
Ryan Tannehill is not a good quarterback with Adam Gase.
Ryan Tannehill was doing pretty okay under the Adam Gase era in Miami. I personally thought that Ryan Tannehill was completely wrong in becoming a backup for the Titans. And frankly, the Titans finally found the gem that was Ryan Tannehill.
After
you know who
Ryan
isn't a gem who can play past the awfulness of Adam Gase? Sam Darnold. If you can't get past the atrocities of your own head coach, does that make you anything but a below average quarterback? If you can't even play well in a situation like that, should you be an NFL quarterback? No.
Matt Rule is the head coach of the Carolina Panthers right now.
Matt Rule is a great head coach.
He was brought in.
Joe Brady is a great offensive coordinator. You know who isn't a great player? Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold has legitimate wide receivers and the best running back in the league. Under a new coach,
Sam Darnold.
not just under a new coach, he was able to leave the worst coach in the entire league. And in the first season, after Ryan Tannehill left Adam Gase, Ryan Tannehill had career highs in touchdowns and completion percentage, led the NFL in completion percentage, led the NFL in passer rating, led the NFL in yards per pass attempt, as well as leading the league in yards per completion. After he left
Darnold were to suddenly show his career high in anything right now, he would still be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league.
I'm taking Sam Darnold.
Even if Sam Darnold, for some reason, hits his career high this year, which he won't, he will still have only thrown 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. He will still have only thrown for 60% of his passes, and he will still have only won 8 games.
He's leaving one of the worst coaches in the league to come to one of the best coaches that has turned Baylor around from a 1-11 record when he got there to 11-1 within 2 seasons.
By that logic, Scott Frost should have been an NFL coach.
There's a difference between Baylor and UCF. Matt Rule is a legitimate coach, knows how to run an offense, and is able to get Sam Darnold a new system, new quarterback, better players. You remember, Sam Darnold didn't have anyone to throw the ball to. He didn't have anyone to have a run game with in New York. He's got the best running back in the league, good wide receiving core, and is going to be able to lead the Panthers to, I'm not saying they're going to even have a winning record, but to say they even have a chance of going 0-17, say they even have a chance of going less than 3-14 is nonsense. They're going to win at least 7 games this season.
You know who never had any targets as a quarterback? Blake Bortles. Never really had the greatest of wide receivers to throw to. You know who I would take over Sam Darnold right now? Who's it currently in free agency? Blake
Cam Newton.
Bortles. You know who I would take over Sam Darnold with his 9 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last year? Cam Newton, who despite only throwing 8 for 10, also added another 12 touchdowns on the ground last year. You know who I would take over Sam Darnold right now? Who's sitting on the bench of the Buffalo Bills? Who led his team to the playoffs despite having by far an atrocious team around him, with an atrocious head coach, in an atrocious franchise. I would easily take Mitch Trubisky, who's sitting on the bench of a NFL team, over Sam Darnold, who somehow has a starting job in the NFL.
Okay, I've got a question for you. Mac Jones or Sam Darnold?
Mac Jones.
You are not realizing the capabilities of Sam Darnold just because he was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Sam Darnold going into the league should not have been going into the league. He was not a very well-developed player. He was not ready for the NFL. Because Adam Gase is such a bad head coach, you know who he picked in the NFL draft? That's right, Sam Darnold. That was Adam
Sam
Gase's
Darnold.
first big mistake.
If there's
Adam
a player
Gase didn't hold
that
back
goes
Sam
to play
Darnold.
for Adam
He simply
Gase,
drafted Sam Darnold.
if there is a player that plays for Adam Gase, they are not going to have a good season. Look at the whole entire Dolphins team. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Devontae Parker, Kenyon Drake.
You're thinking
The
of
list goes
Ryan
on and
Tannehill,
on.
and they made it to
Jarvis
the playoffs.
Jarvis Landry.
They were
Mike
a playoff
Gesicki.
team.
They were not good with Adam Gase.
They were a pretty good team with Adam Gase.
They were not as good as they could have been.
They were not as good as they could have been, but they were still a pretty good team that still made the playoffs every single year. Maybe not every single
No
year.
one
Every other.
expected the Jets to make the playoffs. Sam Darnold did what people expected him to do
Which was
with what he had. They didn't expect Sam Darnold to come in and create something out of the Jets franchise. The Jets were so far gone, they knew Sam Darnold wasn't going to save them. And there's a reason why he got a new job and Mr. Trubisky didn't get a new starting job. Because Sam Darnold is able to lead a team if he has the weapons around him. Sam Darnold isn't a good enough quarterback to create something on his own. But if you give him the correct weapons, he'd be able to lead a team to an okay, respectable record.
The Panthers
There's a reason
Teddy
why
Bridgewater.
Mitch Trubisky is not a starting quarterback right now, even though the Bears are better than the Jets, because he can't do anything no matter what he has around him. Sam Darnold can do something if you give him the right pieces.
Teddy Bridgewater was a proven quarterback who had an okay last year, even though the team around him was very, very bad. The same very, very bad team that is currently being led by a very, 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 very bad quarterback named Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold is going to win a minimum of 7 games this season.
Sam Darnold is going to win a maximum of 1 game this season.
If Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, they're still going to win at least 3 games.
Fine. 2 games, take it or leave it.
I'm taking that all day.
And only will be led by Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is going to do what
Sam
that Louisville
Darnold,
quarterback was doing
Robbie
the other
Anderson,
night and lead the entire
DJ
team.
Moore.
Christian McCaffrey, what he's going to do is do the exact same thing that Louisville quarterback did the other night and lead the entire team across the entire season in receiving yards, passing yards, and rushing yards.
Christian McCaffrey is an important player.
Christian McCaffrey is going to go down to his younger brother, Luke McCaffrey, ask him how to play quarterback, just so he can replace Sam Darnold as a quarterback. You want to talk about a quarterback being a running back? That'll be Christian McCaffrey.
Does PJ Walker play in more or less than 10 games this season?
Less.
Do you think Sam Darnold keeps the job?
No. I
You
firmly
think Luke
believe that
McCaffrey's
Christian McCaffrey
is going to be taking snaps from the center.
will be taking snaps from the center because the team will be so bad.
Oh, man. All right. Going from so bad, why don't we go to the teams that are so good? You get
Let's
flushed down the toilet bowl, and
talk
let's
about a much
go to
better
the Super
bowl.
Bowl.
The
The
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
The moment you've all been waiting for. The picks that frankly have probably taken you an hour to watch just to get to. The picks you wanted. The picks that you just skipped through the video to watch because you didn't give a shit about anything else. We've gone down the toilet bowl and now we're going up to the Super Bowl. It's time for our picks as to who's going to be playing against each other in Super Bowl 56. Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Who's going to be there at all? Are you going to be surprised? You probably will. You've waited for this moment for this entire video. Zachary, why don't you start us off with who your AFC pick is for this year's Super Bowl?
Coming out of the AFC, I'm going to have the Kansas City Chiefs. It may not be a hot take, but there's a reason why it's the popular one. With Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, and Travis Kelce, there's no one in the AFC that is anywhere near the level that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be at this season.
Do you really think the offensive line is going to hold up for Patrick Mahomes going into the season?
Patrick Mahomes is a mobile quarterback, probably the most mobile quarterback in the league, and is not going to have to create for too long until Tyreek Hill gets open. Tyreek Hill can run by you, run routes better than you. Tyreek Hill is better than you in every aspect of football. He'll get open no matter when, where, what, or how. And if you put two cornerbacks on him, you'll have Travis Kelce. He'll be bigger than you, stronger than you, and will catch any ball in the vicinity of him. So with that attack, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire able to run through, under, around, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to score more points than anyone's ever seen, and they're going to end up back in the Super Bowl just like they were last season.
Really? I can't help but think that the Chiefs won't make it close this season. I'm honestly in the belief that the AFC Conference Championship will not even feature the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I will go as far as to say that. Who is your
AFC pick before we go any further?
My AFC pick for this season is the Buffalo Bills. I said this same thing last season. I thought the Bills were going to make it. Said it very early on in the season. It was almost correct. I thought Josh Allen was going to have a great year. He had a great year. And I think Josh Allen is going to follow that up with another great year. The Bills are just an amazing team. They've only gotten better since last season. Last year they were second ranked offense in the league. They didn't have the greatest defense, but overall, that gets better. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde leading you from the deep safeties. Obviously, your defensive line is going to have to hold out. Ed Oliver can do plenty of that. They've added Greg Rousseau to their lineup in the defensive line, which is by far just a complete steal in this year's draft. The 30th pick, and you picked up easily the best rusher in the entire draft class? Oh, for sure. There's no reason that the Buffalo Bills don't make it to the Super Bowl this year. They've gotten so much better. They've picked up Emmanuel Sanders to help them out at wide receiver. They've picked up Matt Breida.
They've gotten better, but I don't think the returners are going to be able to produce at the level they produced last season. Josh Allen, great quarterback, going to be great, but he was probably the second best quarterback in the entire NFL last season, and I don't think he'll be able to keep it up at that level for this season, as well as Stephon Diggs having one of the best years as a receiver that we've seen
He had the best
in a long
year.
time.
Yeah,
And
he had one of the best
with-
years in his career simply because he finally has a quarterback who can throw it to him. There is
With Josh
no
Allen
reason.
and Stephon Diggs both having a career year, and you still can't make it to the Super Bowl. I don't see either of them having anywhere near the year they had last season. And
See,
even with
not only
those
a repeat,
additions,
but an improvement.
see, I like the additions they made, but I think they're too reliant on the players they have now, and those players aren't going to be able to replicate what they had last season. If you can guarantee me Stephon Diggs has the exact same stat line as he had last season, okay, maybe they make a Super Bowl. But I don't think Stephon Diggs is going to be able to repeat what he did at all last season. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad year, but he's not going to be a top 5 receiver in the league this season. He's not even going to be top 10, maybe not top 15 receiver this season.
A bold claim. There is no reason that Stephon Diggs will not be a top 10 wide receiver in the league this year. There is absolutely no reason that Josh Allen won't be a top 5 quarterback in the league this year. This is coming from a Lamar Jackson fan. There is simply nothing standing in the way from the Bills making a deep run in the playoffs, making it to the Super Bowl this year, and more than likely winning it by a lot of points.
Stephon Diggs led the entire NFL in receptions and receiving yards last season.
And
I don't think
I can see
he's
him
going to
doing
be
it
able
again.
to be top 10 in either of those categories again this season.
Stephon Diggs will not fall off that badly in one season. He is a great wide receiver with a great amount of talent, and he has a lot more weapons to distract from him now. Of course, nobody's going to be covering Cole Beasley for many reasons, but that just opens things up. Stephon Diggs to be the best wide receiver he can possibly be.
Our 2 picks, let's remember, played in the AFC Championship last season. Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, AFC Championship. Kansas City Chiefs won that game by 14, I believe. You believe the Buffalo Bills have gotten 14 points better this offseason.
I believe that the Bills have gotten 14 points better, and I believe that the Chiefs have gotten 14 points worse.
You think the Buffalo Bills win by 14 when the Bills play the Chiefs next?
That the Chiefs even make it that far.
Wow.
My picks for the AFC, I think that the Chiefs are going to get stalled out in the divisional round this year.
Divisional round, wow. Week 5. Buffalo Bills at Kansas City Chiefs. Sunday Night Football. October 10th. We've got a month until we're able to see our teams with the best quarterback, the best wide receiver, and the best tight end take on your wannabe best quarterback, former best wide receiver, and the rest of the Buffalo Bills.
Zachary, would you like to tell us about your NFC team? And ultimately, who's winning and what's your score?
I'm thinking for my NFC team, it's going to shock you, coming out of the NFC East.
NFC East.
It is going to be the Washington football team.
Weren't you the same person telling me not to pick the Dallas Cowboys before this?
Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys aren't going to make the Super Bowl.
You think the Washington football team will?
The Dallas Cowboys aren't going to make the playoffs. But the Washington football team is going to make the playoffs, They're going to beat everyone in the playoffs
Really?
that they faced. And the Washington football team is going to make it all the way to the Super Bowl to play the Kansas City Chiefs.
This is the most biased bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
They've got Ryan Fitzpatrick, Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel versus the team that they played the Bucs with last season that almost beat the Bucs.
And you can't possibly be thinking that the Washington football team will beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, though.
I'm not going to go that far and say that they'll beat the Chiefs, but the Washington football team is going to beat every NFC team on their way to the Super Bowl with a weakened NFC division and a better, improved Washington football team. They are going to make it to Super Bowl 56 against the Kansas City Chiefs.
What's your score? What could you possibly think the score is going to be? If it's anything less than 50-point blowout, it's no.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to beat the Washington football team in Super Bowl 56 by a score of 21-17.
A close game. Really?
It is going to be the best offense in the league versus the best defense in the league. The defensive line of Chase Young,
I hope you realize that
and Montez Sweat is going to run riot through the Chiefs' offensive line that failed to even contain 50-year-old Ndamukong Suh and the rest of the Buccaneers in the last two.
I hope that the NFL isn't rigged, because honestly, if the NFL is rigged, they would never even let what you just suggested happen. It would be a PR disaster. The team that formerly had a Native American name versus the team that still has a Native American name.
If those two teams happen to be the best teams in their conferences, then those two teams are going to play in the Super Bowl. And that's how it is. The Washington football team is the best team in their division and the best team in the NFC. And they're going to make the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think your idea is completely far-fetched, that it makes what I'm about to say sound sane.
We played Tom Brady with Taylor Heineke.
And lost. We're not doing this spiel again.
We lost by 8.
We are not doing this spiel a third time. Okay.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is better than Taylor Heineke. Curtis Samuel is better than who knows what receivers we had last season besides Terry McLaurin. Adam Humphries is better. Logan Thomas has improved. Our defense is the best in the league. No team is going to score more than 28 points against us all season.
Best in the league is pushing it. The Ravens exist.
No team is going to score more than 28 points against the Washington football team this season.
Here's what I think. Here's who I think is going to make the Super Bowl this year, going up against the Buffalo Bills. It's the only correct answer. And is certainly a better answer than the Washington football team somehow making it to the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl. You know who I think is going to make it to the Super Bowl this year? I think it's going to be the Buffalo Bills and the Arizona Cardinals.
Whoa! Don't be... You're choking me up. Don't be spreading those lies and,
I think,
frankly, BS to all of our listeners' ears.
I think that team who last season had a top 10 offense, in a top 15 defense, with a completely revamped offensive line, headlined by an absolute stud in Rodney Houston, a veteran presence in wide receiver as in AJ Green.
AJ Green's going to spend more time on the sideline than he does on the field.
A completely dominant two-headed monster running back core with Chase Edmonds and James Conner, the new addition from Pittsburgh.
AJ Green.
A former Baltimore Ravens tight end in Max Williams. With an already great and continuing to improve, with what seems like absolutely no ceiling, Kyler Murray, one of the greatest wide receivers in the modern NFL, in DeAndre Hopkins, an improved defensive line featuring J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, who is all in this season, despite his trade rumors from a few months back, an improving Isaiah Simmons, who's no longer a rookie, Zaven Collins added to their linebacker core, Byron Murphy at cornerback, and Budda Baker still killing it at safety. I see absolutely no reason that the Arizona Cardinals will not perform better than they did last season. And not only will they perform better than they did last season, but they will go on to the Super Bowl to get absolutely crushed by Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills.
See, there's a reason why you think they're going to get crushed. And that's because the Arizona Cardinals
will make it to the Super Bowl.
The Arizona Cardinals are the third best team in their division.
I think that
everyone in the entire NFC.
I think that every team in the NFC, no matter who makes it to the Super Bowl, will be crushed by their AFC opponent. I think in terms of teams that will show out and make it the full way to the Super Bowl this year, Arizona Cardinals will surprise everybody and make it at least that far. Don't get me wrong, I think that the final score of the game is going to be something along the lines of 34-3. You know what? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. 6. 34-6. With a missed extra point.
Someone's going to have to teach Cliff Kingsbury how to coach defense if he wants to lead his team to the Super Bowl. This team isn't going to put up enough points with DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk. I'm not even going to say AJ Green because he'll spend more time in the training room than he does at his house. DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk with Kyler Murray is not going to be a good combination this season.
Absolutely no reason Arizona Cardinals can't make it to the Super Bowl this year. I don't think that the Packers are going to have the chemistry to pull it off. I don't think that the Seahawks are going to have the chemistry to pull it off. The Dallas Cowboys will certainly not pull it off. They won't even make it to the playoffs. And neither will the Washington football team.
So if the Cowboys aren't making the playoffs and Washington's not making the playoffs, who's your NFC East champion right now?
Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh. You are unbelievable right now.
You are a biased Washington football team fan. Who once thought that you would make it to the Super Bowl with Alex Smith on half of a leg.
Yeah, we made it that far, and now we have a quarterback who knows how to throw the ball. You forget how good Ryan Fitzpatrick was to begin last season.
Your team.
You don't realize
significantly less of a chance, certainly less of a chance to make it than the Arizona Cardinals do.
Arizona Cardinals would be lucky to put up 10 points against the Washington football team.
The Washington football team would be lucky to put up a single point back.
I don't think about that. If you get Terry McLaurin against who's your best cornerback? Byron Murphy, probably. You get Terry McLaurin against Byron Murphy, and then let Curtis Samuel go against Robert Alford. Curtis Samuel's winning every time. Antonio Gibson is running right through that defensive line, right up the middle.
Through J.J. Watt, one of the greatest defensive linemen we've ever seen.
One of the greatest defensive linemen who has now been in the league for 10 years.
And is continuing to be one of the best ever. Chandler Jones is an absolute
all of last season.
Dominance at linebacker.
J.J. Watt used to be the best defensive end to ever play. Last season, he played 16 games, had 36 solo tackles. J.J. Watt has had over 36 tackles one time since the 2015 season. He's old. He used to be one of the best, but he is nowhere near the level that he used to be at about 5-6 years ago.
My prediction will stand. At the end of this year, I will be the one praised for being correct in my prediction that no one else thought even close to possible.
I'll give you the agreement that I don't think it's close to possible. J.J. Watt isn't even the best defensive lineman on your team.
I think
Chandler Jones is better than J.J. Watt.
Yes, that's correct. Chandler Jones is significantly better than J.J. Watt, and J.J. Watt is still a great player. What does that say about Chandler Jones?
J.J. Watt is not good. J.J. Watt has the name power, like Richard Sherman and Josh Norman. You put Josh Norman up on any receiver in the league, he's getting destroyed. He's getting shoved into the bottom of the earth, just like Derrick Henry did to him last season. Josh Norman has a nice name, used to be a good player, and that is the exact same thing for J.J. Watt. Nice name, used to be a nice player, now he's just taking up a lot of space on the salary cap.
All right. I think that that's all the time that we have for today.
It was a heck of an episode. You shocked me with some of your picks.
Shocked me back.
the first episode of the podcast is complete on the Lockup Shutdown podcast series.
Can't believe we've made it here after all this time. We finally got around to doing this. We've been sitting here recording for almost 3 hours now. Of course.
I'll go out on this note. In the 4 years that we've been preparing this episode, I don't think I ever could have processed that you think the Arizona Cardinals are going to make Super Bowl. That's my final note, and I will see all of you guys on the next episode next week as we look back on week 1 and continue to look at the next 16 weeks after week 1 of the NFL season.
17. All right,
Yeah,
folks, it's
after the
time to
point.
lock up and shut down.